Thanks to everybody who supported this channel by buying the game. Congratulations to Josh Lewis, who knocked me and my wife off our throne. Congratulations, buddy. Welcome everybody to another episode in which we make our iPhone, mobile, Android game. So, last time, when we press play, we can see that the player can move along. We've got some music happening. We built that music in GarageBand, and the game seems alright. We can dodge these logs and pick up the coins. Cool. So now that we're up to the stage where the prototyping is kind of complete, well, from a very basic level, we've got our very basic game. We've prototyped it. It seems to be going okay. Seems to be going fine. We can start to actually add some art. So what I've done is you can just create some art in Photoshop if you like. I'm no artist myself, so like all my art is quite bad. So I actually got my friend Lucio. He's a friend of mine from Argentina, to create some of the art. His Twitter handle will be in the description down below, and so go check him out on Twitter, show him some love, give him a follow, and check out some of his other artwork. And he just made me some simple assets that we will be importing now. For your game, feel free to go to Fiverr.com and buy some assets or make your own assets. It really honestly doesn't need to be that impressive. My original concept for this game didn't look good at all, but I still got pretty good reviews because the gameplay was okay, like it wasn't too bad. So I am just going to import those game objects. So I'm just going to go over to the sprites folder, right click, import new assets. You can just click and drag, but we're just going to import new assets this way. Now I'm going to go to my desktop, which is where my assets are. I'm going to import objects.psd, background.psd, and floor. Turns out you can import them once at a time. I'm just going to click and drag. There you go. And then what we want to do is do some editing. For the background, I'm just going to make that point, and I'm going to make it 10 pixels per unit. That basically means there's 10 pixels is 1 unit in Unity. So like in the like 1 unit as in, apply that, 1 unit as in 1.0 in the scale of X, Y, and Z, or X and Y. So yep, 10 pixels is 1 unit. That's what we want because I made them quite small. We can actually drop this down to 512. I like 16-bit colors. Oh, actually, let's do true colors. And same thing for the floor. It's single centered, and we're going to do point. We're going to do 512 and true colors and apply. And then for objects, we're going to make it multiple and click sprite editor, click apply, and we're going to just use automatic slicing, and you see it slices perfectly around each one of these objects, which is what we want. Click apply, press quit out of that. I'm going to change it to point as well because all my art is pixel art, and 512 and true color. I might actually add this up to 1000, and also probably this one could be 1000 as well. Awesome, so we have our assets imported into our scene, and that's exactly what we want. Sorry, I didn't slice it, probably slice them, then click apply, then press that button. And you notice there's a little tab on the side here. All of these just have one sprite inside of that game object, but if you open this up, you can see we've got all our different sprites. And I can literally just drag this into the game. There it is, tiny. We can upscale it to like 5 and 5. That looks like a pretty good size. And there we have our sweet game object. So what we're going to do is get rid of that, and let's just start filling in some of the things that we already have, shall we? So right now we don't actually have our player. We'll leave that for a little bit later, and we'll go to our scripts, and we're going to change our token to be an actual token and our trees to be an actual trees. So what we'll do is inside this object, we'll click and drag these game objects into the scene. 1, 2, and 3. These are the 3 trees. Now these 3 trees, they will need a collider. Let's give them a... Well, we can give them a box collider or we can give them a polygon collider. Let's first size them up to the right size. 5 by 5. Which looks like a good amount. Or maybe we could even do 4. 4 is probably better. I like 4 better. And we can change let's just get rid of these 2 for now. Let's just untag them so they're not there. And this one, let's chuck on a box collider 2D. Now that's fine. That's going to be a lot less processing power on our in our game. But you see, if our player's here, it's going to get hit by the box collider. So we can, because our game's quite simple, we can probably use a polygon collider. And you see, well, it didn't do that good of a job, but it actually cut it in there. And if we want to adjust it, we can actually adjust it to be a lot more fine, like that. Add a new section. There we go. Beautiful. And then we can actually copy this component. Turn this on. Polygon collider and paste component values. Because it's exactly the same size game object, it locks around it. So polygon collider, you notice it's got that, it's not working quite how we want it. And then we can just click on this little icon here and go paste component values. Bam, done. Sweet. And then what do we want to do? We want to name them. So inside of our prefabs, we named these trees. So I'm just going to call this tree 0, tree 1, and you guessed it, tree 2. Now the reason we've got 3 different trees is so there's just a bit more randomness to the game, a bit more flair. It makes the game feel a bit more, rigid. And then we can just literally we've got tree 1, 2, and 3. Now what else do they need? Well, our tree has a rigid body, so we can go to our trees, highlight them all at once, and we can give them a rigid body 2D. And make sure that it's the same. Yeah, everything is the same, and we probably want to constrain the rotation on the Z and freeze the position on the X, because we don't want it moving left and right if it bumps into anything. And did we have any? Yep, no, that's fine. And then all we want to do is drag tree 1 there, drag it into the prefabs, tree 2, but it's tree 1, and the third tree, 0, 1, and 2, into the prefab section, and then now we can delete our tree. Go to scripts, it's missing the tree now. If we just add the first tree, just for testing purposes, and delete these trees. Oh, one last thing we forgot to do, sorry. We've got to tag them as log. Make sure to do that. And now we press play. And they fall down and land on each other just like they used to until we turned the layer to log. Do that as well. Yep, and it works fantastic. Awesome. Alright guys, so next thing we can do the token. So if we go to the sprites, get our object here, drag that object into the scene, and we can call this token, and call it 0. In fact, we don't even need to do that. We can actually go to the prefabs, get the token, drag it in the scene, and we can actually just change the game object for this game object and change the scale back up to 1 and 1. Now that is a little bit small. I'm probably going to go 3 and 3. maybe 2.5, 2.5. Okay, and we can reset the box collider. So the box collider goes perfectly around it, but in fact we probably actually want a sphere collider. Sorry, a circle collider. Add component, circle collider, 2D, and it goes perfectly around our circle, and happy days. We want to, so the first one worked, but we want to actually apply that to the prefab, so you'll see the prefab down the bottom change. We apply that. Now it's changed to that token, which is what we want. Tokens work fine, logs pass through. Cool. Okay, so we got our trees in, we got our tokens in, and that looks fantastic. Now I think just because we want to add some variety to our trees, we can actually start adjusting the object spawning script. So let's do that. Go to your scripts, open object spawner. Cool, so our object spawner script is here, and we want to change public game object tree to public game object, and we want to put these two braces around it, which means it's going to be an array of game objects. And we're going to call this trees. And what that'll do is actually help us find all the bugs in our code. And one of the bugs is here. This is saying, well, it's trying to instantiate trees, but it doesn't actually know which trees it wants to instantiate. So what we can do is we can say trees, and then, square brackets, and then inside the square brackets, it's going to ask for a object name, so we can just say like 0, and I think that will work. So press play. No objects are spawning. Oh, sorry, got to add one tree to there. Go to prefabs. Go to scripts. So create an array. We want to actually add that tree to it. And what it's going to do is it's always going to instantiate the 0 tree, which it just did. But instead of doing that, instead of saying, well, just instantiate the 0 tree all the time, we can actually put in here random.range, and then from our minimum we can have 0 to trees.length. And basically what's saying is, well, instantiate a random array from the list of trees array, a random game object. Instantiate a tree game object, TRE, from the list of trees game object. And what one do we want to instantiate? Well, make a random decision for us between 0 and however big the tree array is. So if we go back, we can actually go to the get object spawner script and write 3, and then we can drag over element 1 to tree 1 and element 2 to tree 2, and if we press play, providing my code's fine, random different trees will spawn. There's one tree, there's another tree, and they look a little bit different, but they are actually spawning different trees. Cool. Alright guys, so we've added some more randomness to our game, which is always good, and the tokens are working perfectly fine with the right sprite, which is exactly what we want. And now we can move on to creating the art in and around the player. So to do that, we just want to go to our sprites, and you'll see that we've got our columns here, we've got some hearts, we've got another special coin, we've got the floor in the background that I've imported. I'm just going to start like dragging these in like this and literally just moving them around, resizing them until I find something that I think works really well. So whatever art that you're using, you can just do the same. I won't bore you with showing you exactly how I do that, and I'll just continue to do that. Insert time-lapse video here. Okay, so here I'm creating a sorting layer. So I just went to the background, went to sorting layer, add a sorting layer, add it, and create background. Cool. And forget which way it goes, but basically the further down or up the list is where it will be sorted. So if I go back to the background and I change it to the background layer, it brings it to the front. So we know that we want to actually drag this behind the default. Yep, so that's now works great. So now that's always going to be in the background, and we can keep that at 0 order in layer. So the order in layer is like if you have like a few different items in the background and you want to make one, be like further forward than the others. Anyway, I'm going to continue building the level. Now that we have our game pretty much what we want it to look like, we can always adjust things later, but this is pretty good for now. We can move on to doing the score and things like that. So to do the score, first we probably want, because right now the player moves around, he collects coins, but you don't actually know how many coins that you're collecting unless you go and look at the script and you can see that the coins that you've collected. So what we want to do is we want to go to we want to create some UI first, I think. So go to game object, UI, text. When you create some text, it's going to automatically create for you a canvas, some text, and an event system. Right now we're going to actually focus on the canvas and what that does. Now for this game, I think it'd be really cool if the text just sat there on the back wall. So normally you would use camera overlay, but because our entire game is on one screen, we can actually change the screen space overlay to world space. And we can actually put the sorting layer into the background, and we want to make sure it's 1 in layer, in the order of the layer. Order in layer, oh my gosh. Because obviously the background is at 0, we want this to be just above the background in the background layer. So that's great. So then we can just go to change some of these. I already know that what we're kind of doing, so I'm just going to type it in. 0, 2, 2.5. We want the width to be 10. We want the height to be 10. Now this drops it right down, the canvas right down to our actual spot in the game. The scale can stay at 111, and everything else stays the same. I'm pretty sure, except pixels down here. We want to change that to 100. Cool. Over in our text, we can have the text at 0, 0, 0, and we can hold shift and click this bottom right button, hold option, click this bottom right button, and now it's got 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's exactly what we want. And scale 111, and we can have our font, let's say 12, and put it in the middle, and there we go. We've got this giant text that is looking pretty bad right now, but what we're going to do is you can import some fonts. So you can find fonts anywhere online, but if you're going to release this as a commercial product, make sure that you have the commercial license. You don't want to get yourself into any legal issues. I found just some on a website, and it just had a little icon there that said that it was totally fine to use for commercial use, so I just downloaded a font, and the font that I downloaded is called Joystick, and to import that, all I'm going to do is create a new folder called Fonts, and I'm just going to drag, open the Joystick folder, and drag over the joystick monospace.ttf, which is the actual font. Drag it over, and then in the text we can just adjust that to joystick mono, and we got a big beautiful text. And we can drop the opacity down a little bit, just so it's a little bit nicer. Maybe we don't actually want to drop the opacity. It depends. Just fiddle around, see what kind of game you want to make. I'm going to probably give mine a bit of a bluish tinge, almost like it's not there, but it is. So that's the kind of style I want for my game, because this will change obviously with the gameplay, the score. Cool. So now we've got the basics done. Obviously, there's lots of tweaks we need to do. We can work on the actual score script. And to do that, you can do a bunch of different. You can do this a bunch of different ways. We can normally would create a separate score script to handle all this kind of information. But because our game is so basic, it literally is just one score. I'm just going to put it in the player collide script, and I think that'll be perfectly fine for our purposes. And yeah, that'll be perfectly fine. So let's do that. So in our scripts folder, we can open a player collide script, and it pops open like this. I'll make sure I remember to zoom in this time. Ooh, a bit touchy. And then we want to actually add a new namespace. So we're adding a new namespace so we can access the UI. And all we need to do that is type in using Unity engine.ui. Fantastical. All right, so we got our tokens integer, which is fine. We'll leave the update there because we'll need it later. And then in on trigger enter collide, we've got our tokens that go up, and we literally just need to type in one line of code here. Well, actually, first we need to create. I'm just trying to think how to do this. Create a new variable. I'll put it up here just so it's next to tokens. Public game object. Token UI. Cool. And then all we need to do is say under tokens is run a line of code that just says tokens UI dot get component. And we want to get the text, capital T text component dot text. We want to get the text part of the text component, and we want to equal that to, here's where it gets a little bit tricky, to tokens, which is this variable here, dot to string. Now we have to, the reason it's tricky is because you have to actually say tokens dot to string to turn the integer into a string so it can be passed to the UI. And then add another parentheses and end, and that should all be good. That should work totally fine. So let's give that a whirl. And first of all, in our scripts, actually in our player, the player is now going to be asking for a tokens UI. So we can just drag over the text UI, which we can actually call score. And then when we press play, hopefully it changes. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Awesome, and that'll just keep counting up forever, which is good. But I think once we get, we need to do some fine adjustments to the UI here, because if we don't, it'll cause some problems in the future. But we'll touch on that later on when we get further on in the game. But for now, we'll actually work on creating the health system and the game over system for the game. And we'll worry about the UI and the prettiness later. But yeah, we basically right now we have a working score. We should probably turn that to 0 to start off with. Move it along, move it along. Sweet. And it's just like faint enough that you can see it, and it's definitely like things move past it, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to make it look like it's almost like inscribed on the wall in this weird, strange temple that we're in at the moment. But yeah, I love it. Awesome. Let's work on the final part of the game play mechanics, which is the getting hurt by the log, and let's start that now. So if we go into player collide script once again, we want to create a new method. Well, we've already got the method take damage. We want to create a new method for when you die. I'm going to call this game over. Now, you could just create a void and just have the method, but I think because of some of the cool funky stuff we want to do later on, it might be better to actually wrap it in a coroutine. So it's a little bit more complicated, but it basically works the same as a void as a method, but you got to do a few other little things. So what we're going to do is we're going to say I in numerator. I'm going to call this game over. And then we're going to say what are we going to do? At this stage, we'll say application dot load level main. So that means that if that runs, it'll restart, and we'll make it so, for some reason, we'll make it that, just for testing purposes, we'll make it so if you collect a token, it's going to call game over. I know this is silly, but it's just good for debugging. So, but the way we go to call, and a coroutine, you have to have, you got to have it return something. So to do that, you have to, at the end, just write yield, return null. See, what we could do is we can do things like, yield return new wait for seconds, and then we can just write like wait for 1 second, which is, let's say, wait for 1 second. Cool. So it's going to wait for 1 second, and then it's going to reload the level as soon as we pick up a token. And to call this, you can't just write game over. You can't just write that. You have to write start coroutine, and when you're in game over, and it looks a bit weird. I think you have to write it like, nope. Sorry, I always get this wrong. Start coroutine. Sorry, you have to. Oh, I'm so silly. You have to put the game over in the brackets there, and then you have to add these on the end. Fantastic. So now, when we pick up a token, it will call a game over script. Have some invalid arguments for some reason. We have to add another one. Sorry. I always find the way that coroutines look is a bit weird. So you have to write it like, start a coroutine, game over, and then open, close, and then put that in there as well. It's just, I don't know, it's just confusing. It's just backwards to me, but yeah, I don't know. I don't understand it fully. Anyway, so as soon as we pick up a token, you should wait 1 second and then reload the level. Yep, and that's exactly what it does. Cool. So our game over method, our numerator is getting called, our coroutine. So that's what we want at this stage. Except we don't want to have it so we don't want to make it happen when you get a token. That would be completely stupid. So what we want to do, this is where the update method comes in good use. We want to write if health is less or equal to 0, and then this is what we want to do. We want to copy this, or cut it actually, I should say. Chuck it in there, uncomment it, and yeah, that should totally work. Now, give that a buzz. So now I have to get hit by 3 logs. That was 1 log. Note to self, we should probably turn the audio up for that. 2 logs. And it restarts the game after 1 second. Cool. And that's what we want. I just noticed it was starting the coroutine over and over again. That's because at the start of the game we don't set the player health to be a certain thing, and remember it's a static, so this is where we're causing some problems. So this is actually a good example of how a static variable can totally screw you up. Let's play the game. Let me just die. 1, 2, 3. Now it starts, and it just keeps playing over and over again. It just keeps looping it over and over again. Why? Because our health is still, even though we loaded a new level, it's still set to 0, and then it's running this coroutine, waiting 1 second, and then like reloading, then waiting 1 second, then reloading, then waiting 1 second, then reloading, and waiting 1 second, because we haven't told this to go back to normal. So how we're going to fix that is we can just create a start method here, but later on we're going to be working on a game initialize script, which is just a script that runs when the game starts up. So we can just actually create that now, and that'll fix our problem. So if we go to scripts, go create C# script, we can write game underscore init, the game initialize, open that bad boy up, and then just a quick dirty way of accessing the play collider script and turning things back to normal is we can just write p underscore collide dot health equals 3. So every time this script starts, it'll make sure the health goes back to 3. And we might even want to put this in a wake, because a wake happens before start. And then all we want to do is make sure that this game initialize script is on the scripts folder, and then you should play the game and it should fix the problem. 1, 2, 3. Start of the game again, and look, we can keep playing. How good is that? Awesome. Alright guys, well next time we'll get into fine-tuning some of the things that we've just done, and thanks for watching the video. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. If you've got any questions at all, there's an awesome community in the comment section where people can help each other out, and I can answer any questions you may have. Follow me on Twitter. Make sure you follow Lucio on Twitter as well, the guy who did this really cool retro-styled artwork. And I'll see you next time, guys. Peace!